Good morning, everyone. My name is Nikki Monroe. I am the Environmental Horticulture Agent and Master Gardener Coordinator here in Indian River County. It is my pleasure this morning to come out and talk with you all about the ways that we can provide space for wildlife in our landscapes, all right? So, yes, butterflies are considered wildlife, all right? You would not believe the people who have said to me, "Well, they're not bears." And I just look at them and I'm like, it's the story of all the bees, isn't it? The bees, the butterflies, the bears. So, having said that to you all, let's talk about providing for wildlife. I have a whole thing of papers in my hands. There are times when I actually use these papers, so y'all just gonna have to bear with me. And then there are times when I don't use the papers, but this is my security blanket, so that I make sure that I tell you all the things that I really came out here to tell you. Because I can talk about everything for a very long time. Yes, sir. Uh-huh. Okay, so you have a well on your property and that's what you use for irrigation and you're concerned about the mineral content in the water. Um, the real thing that you should be very concerned about is not necessarily the mineral content, more the salt content of your well. That is going to affect the ways that your plants are going to grow in that water. And there are some plants that are just not going to enjoy drinking that because of the salt. And remember, people, that when we talk about salt content and the way that it interacts with our plants, we're talking about chemical reactions, right? And the ways that a high or a low pH allows things to happen in a chemical reaction. That is why salt is such a big deal, right? Because it makes your surroundings more alkaline. That's one of the biggest factors when we're talking about salt in the water. So that is what I would tell you to get checked. Don't be concerned about the minerals because your plants may or may not be able to take them up. Well, there you should get a water analysis done. Yes. Because whether or not there are things in that water that your plants will like, at a certain pH, they will not take them up. Right? Right? So I know that some of you have been to my classes before, and I'll tell you all about right plant, right place, and we talk about soil pH, and we'll give you the chart that says, at this pH right in here, you can get almost every single thing that your plant needs within this range, right? So that is what what I'm talking to you about. It's not so much everything that is present because you can fertilize until you're blue in the face. If the pH level in that soil is not correct, you're just feeding the ground and your plants won't take it up, okay? All right, so that is why we recommend that at first you do at least get the basic soil test to find out what your pH is so that if you are feeding your plants, you know your plants can take it up, okay? All right, so let's talk about butterfly gardening in Florida, especially right here in Indian River County, Florida, because that's where we are. There are some things that I want you all to know about this from the beginning. One of those things is if the butterfly does not exist in our environment, you cannot coax it here. Okay? You just can't bring it here. I know that you've seen some amazing species in those enclosures that you pay to go into. Those are very highly controlled situations where people have invested a lot of time and effort into creating a condition that is suitable for that butterfly. But don't you worry. I have a little handout up here that's going to tell you all 47 of the native butterflies that are found here in this county. All right? And that way you can have a reasonable idea of what you should expect here. Okay? So having said that, I want to also encourage you all to recognize that if you lay the table for one, many others will show up because everybody eats somebody. Caterpillars, butterflies are food for something else. So if you create a welcoming spot for them, if you lay out a smorgasbord for them, then someone else is going to think you provided for them as well, right? So be aware of this when you are making your plans. You are going to get birds, you're going to get snakes, you're going to get other things. Please do not be shocked, and by all means, my goodness, do not let that put you off the task of providing for wildlife, because that is the Florida-friendly way to do to manage your landscape and to do your gardening in Florida, okay? Here's what I recommend, though. Place your butterfly garden, the gardening that you are doing specifically to attract butterflies and other pollinators, right? In a space where if you end up with a friendly racer, if you end up with a few extra birds, they're not flying straight over your car with their full bellies, right? And of course, they will also feel safe that they can hang out there. That is very important. I do not want you to say, well, I can't use that spot in my yard because I now have a den of snakes. That's not what I'm encouraging you to do. I'm encouraging you to figure out a way that all of you can live in whatever space it is that you have in peace. Okay? That's the idea. All right? Now, there are some really, really beautiful plants that do attract some of the same butterflies that we have here, but they're not adapted to our soils, they're not adapted to our growing conditions. Please put the right plant in the right place so that you are not banging your head up against the wall and being very, very frustrated with the whole process. As long as you put the right plant in the right place, you have a better chance of being successful and being able to sip your lemonade on your porch or your deck and watch the butterflies flutter about, okay? That's the goal here. I do not want you to jump into this endeavor and say, woo, I have a lot of work ahead of me. I want you to relax and know that if you plant the right thing, they will come, okay? They will. All right. The handout that I gave you all, or that most of you all should have, and some of you all will be getting shortly, it's called Butterfly Gardening in Florida. The one thing I want to tell you all about that handout right now is we are in Region 4. That's the only thing I want you to think about with that. Do not go digging through it. Do not go starting to steam your brain on that. Just know that we are located in Region 4. The map on that page is very small, and sometimes people don't necessarily see the outline correctly. So I just want you all to know we are in Region 4 for butterfly gardening. Okay? It is. It is very, very different from hardiness zone. And that is because this is not a USDA hardiness zone map. This is really more of a map that says butterflies are comfortable under these conditions in these portions of Florida. Okay? So we have a butterfly zone map. Yes, ma'am. Yes. You're still in zone 4, darling. Yes. Our zone 4 goes, I think it tops out in whatever that county is just above Brevard. And I can't remember the name of it. Y'all forgive me. Volusia. I think it tops out up there. And that's only because you and I both know Brevard is a very long county. 18 miles, I think it is, isn't it? Oh, my heavens. It takes forever to drive through Brevard County. And that's why a lot of people, like from Melbourne, will come down here for their services. And we welcome you. We encourage you to make your life easier, okay? And the other thing that I want you all to think about with regards to what we're talking about is we are in Central Florida. However, Indian River County is a cusp of Central Florida when you're north of State Road 60 and South Florida when you're south of State Road 60, okay? Yes, y'all, we can't do it simple. But I'm going to try to make it as simple as possible for you because I want you to do this thing that you came here to learn how to do, okay? That is the main thing today. And when you have questions, if you want to send me an email, I will help you figure these things out. If you want to call the Master Gardener desk or send the Master Gardeners an email, they are always happy, willing, and able to assist you with your questions that you didn't necessarily think of while I was talking with you today. Okay? And that's fine. You don't have to say, well, oh, geez, I missed my chance. We're here. Second building above the DMV. They take your money, we give you information. All right? Let me see now if I can unhook this, because I am using it, it looks like. We'll see for how much longer that'll be the case. All right. So there are 3 things that you need to provide if you want your butterflies and other pollinators and other things to stay. They will visit. They have no issues with visiting. But if you want them to stay for generation upon generation, you have to provide them with 3 things. You have to give them food. You have to give them cover. And you have to give them water. So you have to feed them, make them feel safe, and make sure that they have water. Okay? So food for an adult is not food for a baby. All right? So the adults will visit. If you have all these pretty little things here like the pentas, they will visit, but they won't remain, because although they'll drink from that and they'll get energy to fly on and they'll get energy to mate and then lay eggs, they don't have anything on here to lay their eggs, okay? So you also have to provide them with a host for their eggs, somewhere for them to sit down and say, okay, this will be a great nursery for my eggs, all right? And sometimes you will find that host plants also provide many other things. They provide them with, that's what that other paper was for. Y'all, at least I know where it is. This is kind of like my desk. Host plants give shelter. Sometimes there's camouflage, and I can show you that. There's a caterpillar on here. And I'd have to pass it around to you, and some of you might take 2 minutes to find it. Julie will take 1 minute to find it, because she knows them. They're her friends. But it's hard to find it on here. It's very, very difficult to spot the caterpillar on here, but there is one, right? So it provides them with camouflage. It provides them with chemicals that are used for defense, courtship, and reproduction. So host plants are very, very important, right? It's kind of like this is your host family and you're in another country. They're awesome. Let me be very clear. Host plants get eaten. They're going to look tacky. They're going to look ugly. They're going to look abused. They have to be replaced. They have to be managed, all right? It's not hard. Y'all, honestly, it is not hard. When you start one round of dill this week, you start another round of dill 2 weeks later. That's pretty much it. Because they're going to mow down those plants, right? And you're just going to say, oh, my loving task to do today is to drop some dill seeds onto some soil. Here we go. You are the dill fairy. And that's it. Honestly, dill is not hard to grow. Neither is milkweed, y'all. Milkweed has sprung up in abundance in my landscape, and I don't really mind. I do not. I allow the seeds to just blow all over the place, and here comes something very, very cheerful to greet me when I go feed my rabbits. We're not going to talk about my rabbits today. So anyway, please just know that these plants are not going to look magnificent all of the time, but they are going to give you what you require of it if you know what you're planting them for. Have some reasonable expectations. That's going to look tacky, according to us. It is going to be a part of your well-loved butterfly garden, okay? But if I put this in between those two, they're going to camouflage them that now, won't it? We're just going to camouflage everything in our lives. All right? So plant the ones that are going to get mowed down near the ones that are being used for food. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. No, ma'am, because host plants are very specific plants. So the butterfly larvae is very, very specific about what it will and won't eat. Okay? So if I put this dill in between these pentas, pentas are not a host for anything. They provide nectar, but they don't host. So they're the restaurant, it's not home. Okay? All right. And butterflies do have very specific host plants. So we hear a lot about the wonderful monarchs and their issues with their populations on decline, and you're always encouraged to grow milkweed. And that is because, again, monarchs can only lay their babies onto milkweed, right? That's the only thing that they grow that they will eat. So if you don't have milkweed for the monarchs, then the monarchs will come and visit your restaurant, and then they're going to go find a hotel. It's that simple, okay? So when you're managing these plants, for me, when my milkweed grows up, the leaves get stripped down, and the flowers have bloomed, and I've allowed them to seed out and blow their seeds all over the place. I go in, I just clip the stem. I make sure, because I'm a plant person, y'all don't have to do this. I make sure that I trim them back twice. They spring back up, and then I cull them, because now I know that they've become very thick and stocky and woody. And I have an abundance of other ones that are already in the succession, right? You don't have to trim it back. You've got some seeds there already. You can start some new ones if you don't like the look of it trimmed back, okay? But if you do have the bandwidth in your landscape and in yourself to trim it back once or even twice, you're going to get a lot of utility out of that one plant, okay? Now, I have chrysalis that show up on my garden rakes. I have chrysalis that show up. I have chrysalis that showed up on my front door. And my son said, "Mommy, we have to move this because the front door is south facing and it is just going to get dried out before it manages to give us a butterfly." So I said, "Darling, that is between you and that chrysalis. You do your thing." So of course he called me when he was right and showed me that he put it in a really nice spot, and alas, we do have a butterfly. And I was pleased with his decision to be compassionate, all right? But I'm just telling you all that chrysalis will show up in some very strange places, all right? And you do not have to completely put yourself out in order to accommodate, all right? Okay, so natives are usually really, really great. And most of the butterfly gardeners that I know, I encourage them to join their local native plant society because, have mercy, they are generous. I love them. They share their plants. But non-native plants are also valuable in your landscape. Pentas are not native, but they're not invasive either. And so they serve a purpose, even if it is just to mask the unsightliness to us of that very well-loved dill, right? It is still very useful in our landscape. So the idea is, even if you're going to plant something that's not native as a nectar source, please remember that it should not be an invasive plant, because surely there are options, right? We're not without options. So we do not have to plant things that are invasive. And be a good neighbor, y'all. Some of your neighbors just don't want your plants. They really don't. They don't want you to be that generous, all right? I'm grateful that my neighbor lady saw that I'm inclined to like plants. So she came and told me, "Oh, well, you're going to love it. I'm getting running bamboo." And I looked at her and I said, "No, ma'am, you're not." No, because I don't share my plants with you, and I don't want you sharing yours with me. So I recommended clumping bamboo to her, and I even gave her the name of a couple of natives that will do very well in her yard and stay there. Yes? And stay over there. Now, there's a patois way for us to say that, but we're not going to put you all over into the Caribbean today. And all right, so let's talk about water for your butterflies. Watering butterflies is a very, very good thing to do. And unlike the birds, they won't make it if they just jump right in there. Okay? They are delicate and dainty and all that jazz, right? So, what you have to do for butterflies is you have to set up a puddling dish and you're going to put some sand in it. You're going to put a few pebbles in there. And if you have some fruit that did not make it through the weekly rotation, you can put a couple of pieces of that nearby. Because butterflies, they will drown in your puddling dish if there's only water in there and there isn't a safe space for them to land, sit down, and drink. The good thing about putting the soil and putting the rocks in there is they get minerals from it. They get some of their vitamins and other things that they need from in that water because the water is being filled with those things. So it serves a really, really great service to them. Tina, I have a couple of people up here who also don't have publications, so if you're not out. Thank you, darling. I appreciate it. Yes. It is huge. It's 24 pages, I believe, right? Yes. Yes, he's mammoth. Anyway, so what I'm saying to you all is water is important, and I try to put my water on the ground because everybody can get to it that way. Yes, ma'am. Oh, you have your hand up for publications? Okay, so they have their hands up for publications as well over there. Thank you, darling. Yes. Okay, so honestly, the mosquitoes that would bother you and me prefer to be right up at your doorway, and they want to be a little closer, and they're rather lazy, right? That's number one. And the ones that we really, really have to be concerned about, like the ones that transmit diseases to humans, they're more upper class than to want to be putting their babies into puddles. That's one thing about the mosquito thing. The other thing is you're going to change this water out regularly. In the summertime, I change mine out 3 times for the week for 2 reasons mostly. One of them is it is hot and things just start to cooking in it, and I don't like what they're cooking. Okay? And the other thing is if there is disease, I want to make sure that I keep that in a good circulation since I don't have a pond that I have put a puddling thing into. I want to keep some kind of circulation there so that a disease does not incubate and affect other butterflies or other bees or whatever might be visiting. No, I legit have dollar store plates that are they're not super shallow. And I have a little reservoir of sand. And I have some pea gravel that I reuse. I have them, so I have some pea gravel that I have 4 sets of pea gravel that I spread out in the sun when they're not being used in the plate for puddling so that they get sanitized in the sun. Yeah? And I know it sounds labor intensive. It really, really isn't because I'm so blooming forgetful. But I put my puddling dish in a space where I frequent because I have to go take care of Roger and Peter. Yes, they're the rabbits, the aforementioned rabbits that we were not going to talk about. Roger and Peter, yes. I'm really creative. And so I have to see that area, and I have to know what's going on over there, right? So when I'm doing my rabbit maintenance, which is every day, every few days I go over there and I check on what I've got prepared for my butterflies. No. I completely I scoop out the gravel and I put it to the side and I wash off everything else. No, I just rinse it off with water, give it a good wipe off, and then I refill. Yes. All right. So making sure, yes. So they're in the cove of the plants. So I've got a reasonable cove of firebush, gaillardia, native porterweed, red salvia, and milkweed. And they are, and so my puddling dish is in that cove. So sometimes it is fully in the sun, but for the most part, it has a little bit of, it has some cover for them. Because remember, that's the whole idea. You want them to feel safe enough to come get their water, right? So I don't have it out in the sun directly. It's on the ground, yes. Right. I get sand from off the ground. Yes, I do, which is, now there are some people who will tell you that they use a special sand. I'm special. Yes. Sponges do work very well. My problem with sponges is I'm going to run out if I keep cutting them up. Although my son thinks it's a brilliant idea because he likes things like that. I have a dish rag at the sink. He has a sponge at the sink, y'all. And he's my namesake. I'm Nicole, and he's Nicholas. He's shady. He is shady. All right, so you want to provide water, and you can provide water all over your landscape or in one particular spot. Once again, folks, please remember that if you invite one, a whole bunch of other things are going to come, okay? A whole bunch of visitors are going to come into your landscape. Now, a lot of that is truly just a visitation. They're going to come, they're going to be grateful for your hospitality, and they're going to move on. Now, there are others who'll be like, this is my home. This is Goshen to me. Be kind to your black racers. I only have one that's shady, and he is the guy that lives on the northeastern corner of my yard. He likes to just pop his head up and be like, hey! And he does not know that sometimes I'm out there wielding a machete. I will hit him. I will hurt him, okay? Now, then there are two other ones that hang out with the tortoises in another section of the yard. They are more polite about their engagement. They make noise before they come out, kind of like knock on the door. And so they let me know that they are present before they show themselves. They're really awesome. However, I'm just telling you all, please do not think that you're only going to get monarchs in your yard because you only decided to grow milkweed, right? That's not how this works. Because something eats monarch caterpillars, even as distasteful as they are, okay? Something eats them, and that something is going to show up, and then something eats that. Everybody eats somebody, all right? Please remember that. Okay, so let's talk about what sorts. Yes, I do have an abundance of birds. They think to themselves that this is like the best yard ever because I've got sunflowers and other things in there as well, right? And I just try my best at certain times of the year not to park my car in certain spaces of my landscape. And it's not hard. I'm just forgetful. But I learn quickly, and I remember quickly, when they fly over and do their thing. All right? Yes. Am I going to talk about pests? Oh, you're talking about things that will attack your milkweed. Not necessarily, and I'll tell you one of the reasons why. A pest to you is not a pest to. Okay. But I will say to you that if you find yourself having things that you don't want to have, there are ways of managing that. And what I've seen done is if it's an infested part of the milkweed plant, you just cut it off, put it in a bag, and get rid of it. You have just killed most of that population of a thing that you don't want. You see what I mean? So that's what I would say is for pest control. I don't necessarily have that as an issue because I've got a bunch of things and everybody eats somebody. So I've got something in my landscape that goes after them and their babies. Ladybugs are cute, right? They eat other bugs. I'm not kidding. They are cannibals. How do you feel about ladybugs now? I'm here to ruin insects for you. And remember that butterflies are insects. They're just the ones that we prefer. Yes, sir.
Sowing the seed sounds like a great idea, but they also suggest mulch. If you mulch after the seeds in the ground, you help them out a little bit.
Okay, so you want to know about mulching practices when you're managing your land.
Seeds on the.
So I'm going to admit to you that my yard does not have any turf grass,
Oh, okay. Well,
right?
yeah.
My yard is fully covered in mulch.
Oh, okay.
And my milkweed has zero issues
Coming up.
dropping and setting down roots. Zero issues. My red salvia that now I have a whole cove of, and we started with one plant, it is prolific. This amazing thing here is prolific in my landscape, and I love it because then I can tell people, hey, remember you wanted some? Please come get some. I've got some new babies right over here waiting for you to come and just snatch them up, drop them on the ground, and you're fine. But yes, right, we're not going to put my address out there even though. Uh, so the idea is having it mulch is not going to be your problem. They're easy to pull up if it lands in a place of your mulch in a spot in your mulch that you don't want it. It's easy to pull up, and that's part of the reason why I have mulch down. Really, and then that also helps aid me with me getting rid of the things that I don't want. They're easy to pluck right up off of the mulch as well. But my milkweed has had zero issues with succeeding. My gaillardia is pleased. My red salvia is abundant. Um, my porterweed thinks that life is a smorgasbord. Everything that I'm growing that I want to grow in that mulch is thriving, and their children are well. All right. So, okay, so oh, I was going to say that again. A friend of mine told me to be more positive about my description of myself. I mindfully manage my money. I'm very aware of my resources. And so I made friends with a supervisor over at one of the tree trimming places, and I send him addresses, lots of times mine, for deliveries of tree trimmings that they've chipped through. It's a very coarse chip. It never bothers me because I like the look of it. I like the feel of it. Shoes are not my favorite thing in the world to wear. And so their truck will drop off what I think may be about 10 yards of chips. If I allow it to dry out in that mound, it goes down to about 5 yards because it dries, right? We know that this is still succulent material that they're dropping off. So when I lay it in my yard, I might lay it 6 inches thick and it'll desiccate down onto 3. That does not bother me one whit. My neighbors might be still confused, and I've been there for 3 years now, but they'll be okay. Property rights and all that jazz, right? But that's how I go about obtaining mulch. And so far, so good. If my tally is correct, as of last month, I've kept about 400 yards of mulch from going to the landfill just in my yard alone from the drops that they do with fresh mulch. Now, that's my yard. The other tab on my spreadsheet is for other people who got deliveries, and I'm up to 200 and something. So that means that at least 10 or 20 deliveries of mulch has been sent out to other people. And he's sending me the other tally because I've only gotten the people who sent me emails. But he has all of the addresses that I sent him and how many he's dropped off to those places as well. So yeah, so that's how I get mulch. Now, if you're going to be covering a very large area and you do not live in a place where you can't just let people just come and drop a whole pile of mulch in your front or backyard or side yard, then I still recommend that you go bulk and you go to a bulk place to get a very large amount and cover your large space. Yes, sir. You do not get it free from the county because the county does not distribute mulch. They So at the landfill, they have partnered with a composting company. So what they don't use on the landfill itself goes over to a composting company. So you can't go to the county, but again, you can email me. I've got friends, and they've got chips. All right. Okay, so let's talk about what sorts of butterflies you can expect to see here in Indian River County, right? So brush-footed butterflies, those are the kind that you will see on the state's website saying this is our state butterfly, right? That's a brush-footed butterfly. It is the zebra longwing. You're going to see swallowtails, and I'm not going to go through and give you all like the scientific name of them because it is so unnecessary. I wrote it down though for being able to send off a general email and people can know in everywhere else what it is we're talking about. Then we have whites and sulfurs. We also have gossamer wing butterflies. Those are the ones that just look iridescent. And the Atala is one of those. And of course, there are skippers. Let me be very clear. There are butterflies, moths, and skippers. Okay? Not everything you see looking dainty and delicate is a butterfly. We like to lump them all into one big group. And sometimes we see something that's not super colorful and we call it a moth, and it's not. And then sometimes we see this big light green iridescent thing and we say, oh, that's so beautiful. That must be a butterfly. It's a moth, right? But there are butterflies, moths, and skippers. And the biggest distinguishing feature among them are their antennae, right? Skippers have a little ball point. Moths have furry things that go straight up their antennas. And then butterflies have these little things like this on the top of theirs. I did not give that to you all because for the purpose of what I'm teaching you all today, it won't matter. We're talking about just being able to provide for whoever is going to show up in our yards, right? But we do have a good variety of skippers. And they really do look like they're skipping on the ground on their grass. So that is important for you to know, okay? All right, so brush-footed butterflies. The zebra longwing is the state butterfly. It is huge. It is beautiful. You all can't see it from the back there. I'm giving this to you all, and then I'll give you all my little sheet, and you can look up the name and see the photographs, okay? The thing that this needs the most, if you want it to stay with you, is passion vine. Okay, that is where it will lay its babies. So if you want it to stay with you, you've got to have passion vine in your landscape, okay? Yes, ma'am.
I bought one. I just love a passion vine.
I'm so sorry. Okay, so for those of you who did not get the joke, this lady over here says, I bought passion vine because I just love passion vine. I know the punchline to this story.
I don't have one.
You don't have a passion vine anymore. Bless your whole heart. You could, I know.
But
They loved it, and they loved you for it. Oh, you were so sweet. So I have a master gardener who I trained. Me. Trained him. And he came to the office one day with 2 3-gallon pots, plopped them down on the floor, and he says, here, you can have this. And I'm like, sure, I'll take it. What is it? I take free plants, y'all, because I'm mindful about how I manage my money. Remember that? All right. And he says to me, I had dreams of having the red and the purple flowers going up the side of the trellis of my house. That's what I bought these for. And I can't get them to go anywhere because those darn caterpillars eat it down to the nub. And I'm like, thanks. Well, now I have to find something else. And for those of you who want something beautiful that's going to remain, I have a vine for you. It's called coral honeysuckle. It's a beautiful Florida native. It will stay with you. So you switched out to coral honeysuckle? Oh, so there you go. So coral honeysuckle is a beautiful plant that only provides restaurant services. Okay? The vine itself is not going to get eaten down. You get to grow that over your trellises, over your gazebos, over your pergolas, wherever you want it to stay. It will happily stay there, and it will provide the look that you want and the food that they need. So there is a vine, and there are several others that will stay with you. But passion is not one of them, because that is a host plant. And we know that our hosts get eaten out of house and home. Yes? Yes, ma'am. It tends to come back if it was allowed to be established. And if you go through the trouble of doing that, I recommend netting and getting it so that it is at least 4 feet tall and about 2 feet wide in bushiness before you allow the locusts to come through and mow it down. Because then you have a good, vigorous root system that will be able to push back up more. But if you have a thriving colony of any of the brush-footed varieties, it's iffy about how resilient it is going to be. What I encourage people to do is take cuttings and propagate new ones in other spaces that are kept safe, so that they can always have some if they're growing it for the butterflies. Because surely, in Florida, that's what you're doing. You're not going to have a thriving passion vine where there are zebra longwings, Gulf fritillaries. What do these things have in common, y'all? Passion vine. And they're beautiful, though. So you get robbed of one type of beauty, and you get to enjoy the other kind, okay? Yes, it does come out with a passion flower, and there are some people who grow the variety that makes the fruit. The kind that we're talking about is just ornamental, and it's really just for the butterflies and bees. No, it's just that you don't have any of the things that eat it over there helping you manage and control the size of your plant. Yes, ma'am.
So does the fruity one not attract?
The fruiting type does attract those caterpillars, but it just doesn't seem. I think it's the variety of last resort. Right. Okay. Okay, and then there's this beautiful thing called the American Painted Lady. I have a couple of those in my yard. It prefers cudweed, but it will take anything in the aster family. And so watch out for your lettuce. Don't plant your lettuce. Okay, so if you're vegetable gardening at all, like I am in this pot here, right? This pot's doing triple duty. I've got my herbs, I've got my things to attract pollinators, and I have my tomatoes and a very nice Apache pepper in there. It's okay for me to have flowering things that attract things that make caterpillars in this pot. But if you're trying to grow green leafy vegetables of any variety, that's not where you want to intercrop with flowering things, okay? If you're trying to successfully vegetable garden, that's not where you want to put your plants for your butterflies and stuff, because there are some butterflies that like them as their host. And you won't get not one good head of cabbage. You won't get one good thing of romaine lettuce. My rabbits would be happy, but I'm not one of those people who do that. So anything in the aster family, you're going to end up with the American Painted Lady, but she's beautiful. And cudweed. What we call cudweed, they like. I don't like cudweed. You know, the truth to the matter is, it provides me with no pleasure. It does not have a flower that I'm fond of. It does not have an appearance that I'm keen on. So it's like, I can give it other things. I do have things in the aster family, right? So I've got other plants that flower out that are hosts to those butterflies. So I do have those butterflies. I just don't have cudweed. It's not my thing. And that's the other thing. I'm trying to give you all ideas, right? But there are so many ways to do this. You are not locked in to a very stringent thing that takes your feelings and desires and wants out of play. I want you to look at your butterfly garden and say, I appreciate this spot in my landscape or these areas in my landscape, right? I want you to not say, oh, that's my sacrificial area. You're not going to be a martyr on the stake of providing for wildlife. There's no such thing when you're doing Florida-friendly landscaping. I want you to have a beautiful, easy to maintain space. That's the plan, okay? And if it's not that, then we have to figure out what went wrong, okay? That's what we have to do. All right. Then everybody's most famous brush-footed is the monarch, right? He's adorable. He's handsome. I'm only showing this type of milkweed, but there are about 4 other types of milkweed that grow very well here, okay? There's a huge leaf that's really, really thick, and I can't remember what the name of it is. It's giant milkweed. And it's got a silver leaf. It's just so beautiful. I've killed 4 of them before I got them in the ground. I had things going on, y'all. I did. But I have a very, very kind and compassionate friend in the Native Plant Society who is propagating me yet another one. I'm going to plan the day when I go pick it up that I can just put it in the ground at the same time. That's my game plan. I figured out what went wrong. It sat there, and it couldn't yell, right? Unlike the things at Home Depot that are like, psst, psst, hey, girl, you should be mine. All right? So anyway, there are different varieties of milkweed. So if you don't like the look of this one, by all means, go get you another kind. The monarchs don't care. See him on there? He has no issues. He's like, yum, breakfast, lunch, dinner, housing, right? He doesn't care. And he won't care if your milkweed is giant milkweed. All he wants to know is, did you provide the correct type of plant? Is it in the milkweed family? Yes. Check. I'll be there. Guess who's coming to dinner? And we're going to stay forever, right? That's the idea. So if you don't like the look of that milkweed, if you want something to match your white garden aesthetic, there are other varieties that will go well and do well, okay? All right. Then there's this, he's an imposter, y'all. But there's the Viceroy. And you're going to find him near a lot of your wet areas because he likes willows. That is one of his hosts, okay? And if you plant a couple of sacrificial banana suckers near this willow, and banana suckers don't mind being in wet areas either, when they fruit out and a little bit of their fruit rots and drops down there, the Viceroy will be very pleased because they eat rotten fruit, okay? So you're not going to have any waste of your space or of the things that came out of your landscape. And of course, there's water there, right? It's a wet area. All right. I don't know why this is repeated, but I will admit that I reshuffled them yesterday. All right. Let's talk about swallowtails. And I'm telling you all some of the more famous varieties. The handout that I give you, I went on to the Florida Museum page, and they have a butterfly database that is the envy of many, many other state museums. For you in Brevard, I don't have Brevard's list. There will be overlap, right? But because you span another very long temperature range, I would encourage you to go on their website, put your county in, and it's going to give you, well, pick a butterfly, any butterfly, click on it, and it's going to tell you everything you want to know about that butterfly to be able to call it to your landscape. Okay? Florida Museum. If you type in Florida Museum, UF, you're going to find our museum, right? That's one thing. Another thing that you're also going to encounter is if you put in database, butterfly database, it'll probably take you straight to the butterfly database. I like jumping around on the museum website because I'm that kind of person. But it's very, very useful because then you can select the butterflies that you want to grow things for and then determine if you are the right space for that kind of plant. And then if you can expect to have that butterfly in your landscape. I want you to have reasonable expectations, okay? And I want you to have a better time, less error, even if you're doing a trial, okay? All right, so there are the swallowtails. And this one here is the giant swallowtail. He's got a wingspan that is just massive, right? I've seen him cover up, like to go to drink at one of these pentas, and his wingspan is out here across the penta. They are amazing. And I run around giddy in my yard when I see them. I can't lie. I'm a big old kid, if y'all haven't caught on. And what they like the most, those of you who are citrus growers, cover your ears. They love citrus. This is a pest in citrus groves. One person's pest, another person's treasure. All right? But if you're growing something like wild lime that is really more ornamental than anything that anybody wants for fruit purposes, you're not going to be disappointed that it's eating down your citrus tree, and they will come there and they will stay there in your landscape. I have citrus that has a lot of greening in it. It was born that way. And so I don't have a problem. Those are over in specific places. And I just put other things around it. And I'm like, thank you for your sacrifice and your service in my landscape. Okay? Their larvae look like bird poop. It is not encouraging to look upon. And you're going to think you need to get your hose and hose it off. Don't. It's a whole entire caterpillar. But their caterpillar looks like bird poop. And when my sons were much, much younger, I enjoyed telling them that. I only have boys. So I had to be the grossest, most disgusting mommy ever so that they didn't try to one-up me because I would have ran screaming for the hills. I've never had a frog under my pillow because I pretended to not be afraid of them. Don't tell my sons. All right. And this is a beautiful swallowtail. This is a zebra swallowtail. So the black and white markings are there. Okay. Their caterpillar is one of the cutest things ever. He's green. And I love green. Green is one of my favorite colors. No wonder I'm a plant scientist. And the loving green came long before I figured out that you could do plant science as a profession. Okay. And this loves the pawpaw plant. I would encourage people who are further west to try to grow this. I wouldn't encourage those of us who are far east in Indian River County to grow this, simply because the pawpaw plant likes it a little bit cooler, and we know that Fellsmere can get significantly colder than those of you on island who are buffered with water on two sides, and those of you who are lagoon side or adjacent, because we've got the water to buffer the temperatures. They've just got all that land, right? So I would encourage those of you who are further west, try the pawpaw plant if you want the zebra swallowtail. And please send me pictures of your caterpillars. All right. Then there are whites and sulfurs. These are some of the most fun itty-bitty butterflies because they look like a yellow stream, right? If there's a whole bunch of them in your yard and they're around your pea plant, or if they're visiting one of your, cassia. I had the scientific name in my head, senna, but if you have a cassia, be it native or the very invasive Bahamian kind, which we're not going to get into that today, right? You will have a bunch of yellow butterflies that just flutter about. They look like a yellow river. They're so cool. Now, they're itty bitty. This is the cloudless sulfur. That's the one that you're going to get the most of. but they are bright yellow and they're just so delightful when they come around. And they just swarm and they go around the place and you're like, "Oh my goodness, that's what I planted that for." Right? That's what I'm sitting out here drinking my coffee and thinking this is better than watching telly. It is it's a cassia, right? And again, I would encourage you to check out your Native Plant Society. Someone is going to be willing to share that. And of course, partridge pea is also good for keeping them around. Okay? Okay, and then there's another gossamer wing that a lot of people know and love. And Julie, you're going to love this. It's the Atala that was thought to be extinct. And someone gardening in our Fellsmere found them. And now they're even oceanside. They're over at JC Park. And they're further down. They prefer it very, very warm. And this is the Kunti. I have a few Kuntis in my yard. I will be getting more. If I can sacrifice underneath one of my mango trees. We'll see. We'll see. I don't know if I want to feed me more than I want to feed the Atalas that have not shown up. Kunti is a host plant. So that is the only native Zamia in Florida. It's supposed to have been something that was around from when the dinosaurs were here and stuff. I'm not too worried about whenever the dinosaurs were here because I haven't seen any. But I have seen these Atala butterflies. And so if you live in a zone where it's going to be warm enough and cozy enough for them to maybe come and visit you, by all means, you can send me an email and I'll share a Kunti with you. All right? And then there are skippers. Skippers skip on the ground like like humans do as well. And they like to skip on grass. And I say grass because even though it says St. Augustine grass on this, I have other ornamental grasses that I found skippers on. So even though I don't grow a turf grass, I do have other useful grasses in my landscape. And they do come and lay their babies in there, and I'm quite pleased with having them in my landscape, okay? All right, so those are some butterflies that are very, very common and easy to spot here. And then I have the handout that has all 47 of them that you can find throughout the county, okay? Now let's talk about fruit-bearing plants because some of them will eat rotting fruit. And some of them will also go to these fruit-bearing plants to have shelter, to just hang out for a wee bit and whatnot. So let's talk about some of those. There's elderberry. It's not only good for cough syrup, okay? It grows to about 15 feet tall. It does take pruning very well. So if you don't want anything that's 15 feet tall, you don't have to have it 15 feet tall. You can hack that thing up as many times as you want to. It will be coming right back. It is very resilient. Now, just like when I told you all that I trim back my milkweed, it's going to start looking abused. Just like your milkweed, it will happily propagate itself. Or you can mindfully propagate it by sticks or by planting the seeds. Any which way you feel like getting more elderberry, it is willing to accommodate you. It is prolific. My goodness, I've had people who, and y'all please don't do this. Do not stop on your drive home, pull off on the side of the road, and cut a piece during rush hour traffic. Y'all, please don't do that. Okay? Please don't. That's not safe behavior. Okay? But I've had people who call me gleefully to tell me that's what they did because they saw it on the side of the road and they recognized it from one of my talks. That's not safe. I want you all to be very mindful about the ways that you're taking care of yourself. Okay? This is all about you having a better time of this. So please don't just pull over in rush hour traffic just to go get you a cutting. Mark the area in your mind and then go back there on a day when it's not heavy traffic, okay? Who raised their hand just now? Yes, sir. let me be honest with you. I have not checked the way that they grow, right? So you're asking me if they have rhizomes. I'm not very sure. What I am aware of, though, is that their seeds have a very high rate of efficacy, right? They will not let you down. If they land on soil, they are there to work, okay? All right, so full to partial sun, they have fragrant flowers year-round, okay? So what's in it for elderberry for you? If you choose to use the berries or if you choose to allow the birds to come and eat them, they're beautiful purple, very, very dark purple berries. They look black even. So if you choose not to make cough syrup out of them or whatever you want to use them for, then you will also be inviting a significant amount of birds to come visit your landscape. So if you're into birding, if you're one of the members of the Audubon Society, elderberry is your girl, okay? And of course, the fruit is edible for humans. All right, then there's beautyberry. They have a few of them here. They don't have the berries on them because it's not time for that right now. But this grows super well in shade and part shade, okay? It has an almost neon purple berry. It's a mixture of purple and magenta that looks like someone stuck an electric cord into it. It is super bright. And you can see that in your shade areas. Yes, you're looking at me and saying, is this another oak tree solution? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. If you can't find anything gorgeous and bright to cheer up underneath an oak tree, beautyberry is your girl, for sure. They will hang out, they will drink beer, they will dance on top of the tables, they will have themselves a really great time, and you will have an improved appearance underneath your oak tree with 0 issues. I would like for you all to remember that you all are living and enjoying your life in Florida, okay? We have a lot of oak trees, we have a lot of shade areas. We also have a lot of pressure from sun. We are the sunshine state, right? We also have a lot of pressure from our soil not holding nutrients and not providing nutrients. Beautyberry doesn't care because she's native and she loves it here. She hangs out with the oaks all the time in our natural areas, right? So they naturally get along. All right, so I'm telling you this so that if you have a problem with the shade under your oak and not being able to grow anything, which is not the truth, it's just not anything that you are currently wanting, I recommend that you give yourself a break. Thank you for coming. I recommend that you give yourself a break. Reassess what it is you moved to Florida for. It was totally different from wherever it was that you originally came from, right? Or those of you who have always been in Florida, then you love it here anyway. Be kind to yourself. Put some beautyberries underneath your oak trees. That can be your butterfly gardening space. Yes. Of course you can do it in a pot. Yes. And I have a funny brain, right? So if you have a particular gardening challenge, I will be your bestest advisor because I find ways to give you what you want. I figured out that I really hated hearing the word no, and they said it to me a lot. Why? Because I have a funny brain, y'all. And then when I had my children, I'd already figured out that I didn't like saying no, so I said a lot of yeses to my sons. So they did spitballs. They did water balloons. They did a lot of interesting things, but I said yes to them with the ways that they could do it without getting into trouble, yeah? So I'm your gardening friend. So if you have a checklist of things that you can and can't do, I can help you get it done. All right? Okay. So beautyberry, it's a sprawling bush. It takes up a lot of space. Yes, ma'am. Oh, so it goes 3 to 8 feet tall and almost as equal wide. For sure, you're going to get at least 4 feet wide, okay? So it likes to take up the room. And like this big oak tree here, there's a lot of room around this tree. It doesn't take that many of those plants, Isn't that awesome? And you want something that's going to cover up the soil in that area, right? The whole purpose of really being mindful about how you're managing your landscape is to make sure that you're covering your soil so that that's not getting hit by water and running off, right? That's something important. So, yes, beautyberry is a wonderful addition to your landscape. Yes, sir. Oh, yes, you can eat it. I've heard people talking about making beautyberry jam. I do not have that level of patience. Just not, just not for me. But I've seen it, and it's a beautiful magenta-looking thing. I would want to paint with it. Yes, they stay for a very, very long time. And the good thing about them staying for a very long time on the plant is you get to enjoy the view, right? Okay, Florida privet is another very beautiful shrub. It does get used as a standard in other in landscapes. So sometimes they'll just snip off all of the extra branches and just encourage one part of it to grow up. But it is a shrub. All right. It really it tops out at a mature height of 10 feet. And so if you have a limited amount of space in your yard, and if you can't grow something very, very far from your house, so if you have a smaller lot, privet is your friend. Okay? Privet tops out at 10 feet. That means his root system is going to be, and he goes to about maybe 5 or 6 feet wide. So 2 to 3 times that outward, he's not fighting with your septic, he's not fighting with your foundation. Privet is a very kind plant, does not want to do anything more than give you the pleasure of seeing it evergreen, enjoying the smell of its flowers, and it grows really, really fast. It is drought and salt tolerant. So if you live on island and you want something nice and neat, privet is your friend, okay? It does. And the fruit attracts birds, and it's also a very dense looking shrub. So birds will hide in there. Your other things will hide in there too, y'all. Okay? Other things will hide in there too. So please don't go beating around the bush. That's not going to be good, okay? All right. And then there's this other really, really gorgeous, super green shrub called wild coffee. And that is a lot of fun when we do that in plant identification because part of its name is nervosa. Y'all, people really tried to make coffee, real coffee, human drinking coffee out of this. Don't do it. That's why it's named nervosa, right? That's the coffee for the birds, y'all. Okay? Just let the birds have it. And it's perfect because it is another shade-tolerant, super deep green leafed plant. So when you're told that things are not super green in the shade, that's not really true. It does not always you don't always need full sun to have things that are super green underneath in your landscape. You don't. No. And look at you. Thank you. Right. I'm glad that I gave you some information today. It grows up to 8 feet tall. That's where it maxes out at maturity. Partial to full shade. This is not a plant that wants to be out in the center of your yard with the sun beating down on it. It likes being tucked up against a new friend, okay? And yes, I like making the bear references, but this time it really prefers rum punch. It blooms spring to summer. It attracts butterflies and birds. So the flowers are there for the butterflies, and the fruit remains there for the birds. It is really, really great. I'm going to make one of my coffees become friends with one of my oaks in the back in a few weeks. And that's only because I've found that I have a new set of birds that are hanging out in that area, and I want them to feel like they're welcome, okay? All right, so those are 4 really great native plants that you all can try, and the majority of them will do well in shade, part shade to full shade. Some of them will go to full sun because your privet will go to full sun if you want it to. Okay. And now let's talk about the nectar plants, okay? There's porterweed. I encourage you to get the native, and simply because we don't have enough of it, and it lays down like a welcoming mat, and it will also provide for native bees that are ground living bees. They don't like going too high up in the air. They really, really like their zone down there at the bottom, and that's what the native porterweed will provide, okay? It grows up to 1 foot tall. Okay, that's native porterweed, and then it gets 2 to 3 feet wide. So it also acts as a ground cover. This prefers full sun to part sun, but it really, really wants a few hours of really good sun. This is not for your shade areas. This is for the edge of your shade areas. What I like, yes, ma'am.
I have one of those porterweed, but it grew like a bush in the front of my house. I mean, it just took off, and then a piece, because I do all pots,
Mm-hmm.
a piece of it got in between the bricks, and it took off like a tree.
Okay.
It's not.
I don't think that you got the native porterweed, even if you got a variety of porterweed. All right. So the one that you had, because it's not growing like I described, and because of what you just said, it is unlikely to be the native. Okay. Blooms all year round, and it has beautiful. They call it blue porterweed, but the flowers look purple to me. But maybe I was not here when the color wheel was invented, y'all. And it has medium salt and drought tolerance. I think it actually has a high salt tolerance because my granny had this in Cayman. And Cayman is below sea level. We don't have anything but salt air. And it was just fine. It was abundant in her yard. Okay? Then there's that vine that I mentioned before, coral honeysuckle. So those of you who want to dress up a pergola or something else, this is the one that won't get mowed down, but it will provide food. Okay? Full to part sun. Blooms spring through fall. And, catch this, hummingbirds love it because it has that tubular flower. Okay? So you'll be getting hummingbirds with that one as well. All right. Then there's necklace pod. Those of you who invite the little people to come over and spend weekends or days, or you all have little people who are visiting, this is not the plant for you. Necklace pod is exactly what it sounds like. It looks like a pod that looks like a string of pearls, okay? Little children like things like that. If you are still in the stages where you have little children frequenting your home, this is not the plant for you. Why am I saying that? Because the seeds are poisonous to humans, okay? It has a high salt and high drought tolerance, but if you are still in the little people phase, this is not going to be on your list of preferred plants, okay? Then there's Jatropha. It has been nativized. I have one here. This is not the only thing about this that I'm enamored with, even though that's enough. I really like the way the leaves are on this. It grows to about 8 feet tall. It blooms all year. The whole entire year, you can go out there and see flowers. Okay? And this provides nectar. It is drought tolerant. Please remember that doesn't say drought resistant. It will show you signs when it is super thirsty. And if you don't have an automatic irrigation system, or if you're not managing your irrigation system, it might need a drink of water sometimes. But for the most part, it's going to do well here without a lot of inputs from you, okay? It is Jatropha, G-A-T-R-O-P-H-A, Jatropha. All right? So those are some of the plants and things that I wanted to share with you all, and some talk and some information about the butterflies that are here. Okay, now let's look at that publication that I gave you all, because it is long. It is 24 pages long, right? And this is supposed to be set up to make your butterfly gardening life a lot better. Remember that we are in region 4 on this butterfly, in this butterfly publication, okay? So every section of this What I want you to keep in mind is that we are in Region 4. This publication is more set up to, it's mostly a bunch of tables with a whole lot of information. Lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of information. All right? So it gives you keys to using the tables, and it also gives you the keys to the tables. So the first table is a specific family of butterflies. Those are the swallowtails. Table 2 is about the whites and sulfurs. Table 3 is about the gossamers, and so on, okay? All the way down to table 6, those are butterfly family specific tables. So if you want butterflies in that family, this is what you have to do. Then table 7 says, here are nectar plants that we recommend for each zone. Because remember, nectar plants don't have to be host plants. You can just say, I just want to run the restaurant. I don't want my plants looking beat up and abused. They can move on. I'm just a rest stop, right? Great. So you can look at that and say butterfly nectar plants. Table 7 is for regions 1 to 4. And then table 8 is for regions 5 to 7. We overlap with 5 because we are Indian River County, and we just have a little bit of, we have it hot enough here in some places, especially if you're more towards the water, that we have it hot enough here that you can grow some of the things that they recommend growing for nectar plants. Some of it will overlap. But for the sake of ease, stick with table 7. Don't worry about fighting with table 5. I'm just telling you all that because I got an email one time. Well, have you thought that we could overlap with 5? And I'm like, of course I thought that we could overlap with 5. I just don't want to muddy the water. So for those of you who would want to send me that generous email, please don't. I'm still catching up on my emails. It took me 2 weeks to answer Julia the last time she emailed me, and I love her. Okay? All right. So let's talk about looking at the tables, okay? I want you all to pay attention to when I give you all this sheet here that says, here are the types of butterflies that can be found. All right? When you find that butterfly on this as well, it says, don't pay attention to regions because we already know we're in 4, right? So as long as your region overlaps, I want you to pay attention to habitats. Habitats is the most important thing for you, right? Because some of these habitats are not going to line up with your particular landscape. Remember when I told you all the pawpaw plant is the host for the zebra swallowtail, I think it was, with the beautiful green caterpillars? Okay, yes, I got that right. The pawpaw plant is not something I'm going to try to grow in my yard. It's just not. And I'm not that interested in eating the fruit enough to grow it, right? I've got friends in Alabama if I really want the fruit. So having said that, habitat is very, very important. Another thing on these tables that I want you to pay attention to is flight season. This is when you should expect to be able to see them. So if you're a snowbird, I want you to keep your time here in mind when you are setting up your butterfly gardening plans, right? That you want to cater to what is going to bring you joy while you are here. Those of you who are year-round, you're okay, right? I'm just joking. But it helps you to be able to say to yourself, well, I put this down. Where are my butterflies? Hold on, they're coming, right? It's just not their time yet, all right? But you can expect to have some butterflies in your landscape all the time. I have monarchs in my landscape year-round. I have neighbors who push babies in prams in my landscape when I'm not supposed to be at home. Because I have all the butterflies. They stopped doing that apparently, but okay. So habitats. Once you check off that it's one of the butterflies that you can expect in this county, I want you to say, okay, habitat, do I have the right kind of habitat? Fields, gardens, wetlands, woodlands. Well, you have a garden, buzzing, you're in business. Okay? But do you have scrub, woodlands, fields, pastures? Right? Even though it is a plant that, even though it is a butterfly that is here, do you have the kind of habitat that it is used to? And will you be able to successfully grow those plants? Those are questions to ask yourself. For the most part, the answer will be yes. For the most part. I think that's just a little too loud for me to keep on trying to talk over, right? Okay. Now, when you look at habitat information, you're going to catch on to the trend, and you're going to also see that when it says gardens, it's going to say something that you can normally expect to have in your garden, right? So there's one on here that says parsley. That is on one of them that says its habitat is gardens, right? So that's important. I want you to pay attention to the habitats. I want you to pay attention to the flight season, especially if you're not here all the time, or if you're like me and you just want to have friends in your landscape all the time. I got to make sure that I have adequate company, because Roger and Peter, they throw shade a lot, and I just have to be like, there's a stew pot waiting for you, Roger. There is. It's not mine, but there's a stew pot waiting for you. You know what I mean? And I just have to have some other things that want to encourage me. So that's the main reason why I gave you all that publication, so that you can see the things and be able to have a little bit of a framework for planning your butterfly garden.